Hello, welcome. Today I want to talk about something that has stuck with me and my walnut brain since I was but a 17-year-old lad, and how every time I think about it, which is often, it gives me monkey brain. Back in high school, I read the Lord of the Rings trilogy for the first time, and I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't really read them. I mostly just sped through them just to be able to say that I did read them. So I didn't really appreciate what I was reading, but there was one very short part, very brief moment in The Two Towers, and it's literally like 2 sentences long, if that, and it's when Gandalf is retelling his account of the battle with the Balrog. For the most part, Gandalf's retelling of this story is pretty much the same as it is in the movie and the book, but there's a few passages that really stood out to me all those many moons ago. But before we get into that, let's talk about Gandalf and the Balrog and better understand who and what they are, where they come from, so we can better understand the impact that is their fight. In my last video, I talked about the Ainur and how they were the spiritual offspring of Iluvatar, the god of Middle-earth. And within the Ainur, there's a hierarchy or subclasses, if you will. The Valar are the greater, more powerful, more majestic of the Ainur, and there's many named Valar within the stories, within the Silmarillion, but that's a whole separate video in its own. And then there's the Maiar. They are technically still Ainur because they were in the heavens with Iluvatar and took part in that whole sound battle singing competition that happened, but they aren't as powerful as the Valar. Think of it as like gods and angels. Valar, gods, Maiar, angels. From within the Maiar, there was, according to Tolkien, no more than 7 of these Maiar that fell and became servants to Melkor, Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, and became fallen spirits. And these fallen spirits became the Balrogs. Yes, plural, there was more than one of them at one point. Crazy. And since they lacked physical bodies, they were still a spiritual being. They wreathed and wrapped themselves in shadow and flame and crafted whips and blades out of fire. And they fought for Morgoth while he was the big bad at the time. But once he was defeated, spoiler alert, the Balrogs that were left after all these battles scattered all across Middle-earth, one of them ending up at the bottom of Moria. It doesn't have a name, but it's typically called Durin's Bane since it killed Durin, who was the ruler of Moria. So just like the Balrogs, Gandalf is also a Maiar, but he's a good guy. So he's also what is called an Astari, of which there's 5 of them. Saruman the White, Gandalf the Grey, Radagast the Brown, and the 2 blue wizards, Alatar and Palando. And the crazy thing about these 5 is they had to be nerfed before coming to Middle-earth. By nerfed, I mean the Valar checked the patch notes, and we're like, if we let these guys go over there as they are, they'll be the new meta. And by be the new meta, I mean basically be so powerful and so darn near unstoppable that they have the potential to become tyrants and rule over all of Middle-earth if they so choose. Which would be very counterintuitive because the whole reason for sending them to Middle-earth was to help guide the inhabitants of Middle-earth. So to nerf the Astari, they gave them physical bodies, which limited the use in their power that they could apply in Middle-earth. But also there was a second reason for having a body. They were able to better connect with the inhabitants of Middle-earth and better understand the woes and tribulations that it is to have a body. What better way to understand those you were sent to help than to live as them, am I right? Okay, lore dump finished. Hopefully that was clear and concise enough to understand the difference between Valar and Maiar and what they are. Let's get to the Battle of the Peak, and by golly is it peak. But before we experience peak, we have to experience the depths. So Gandalf, after he reveals himself as Gandalf the White to Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas, they beg him to tell them of the fight. And Gandalf's a bit reluctant. He's like, we don't have a ton of time. Even if I took a whole year to tell you about it, I still wouldn't be able to fit everything into it, which is just bonkers. And Gandalf, he starts pretty much right where they last saw him, which was plunging into the depths of Moria. And this is what Gimli has to say about those depths. Deep is the abyss that is spanned by Durin's bridge, and none has measured it. And do you know what Gandalf says in reply to that? Maybe if you've read the books. He says, yet it has a bottom. For 5,000-ish years, the dwarves tunnel and dig and excavate underneath Moria, and they never find the bottom of it. Then this old coot comes around, does an any percent speed run to reach it while fighting a freaking Balrog, sir. And it is here, in these depths, at the roots of the world, where my 17-year-old brain went. So Gandalf is telling of his fight. He falls into the depths, they fall into the water with that immaculate scene from the movie that gives me chills every time. And while he is fighting there, they come across these tunnels that are not made by dwarves. And I'm just gonna read what Gandalf says in the book because, surprise, surprise, Tolkien is way better at this storytelling thing than I am. So of these tunnels they're fighting in, Gandalf says, "They were not made by Durin's folk, Gimli son of Glóin. Far below the deepest delvings of the dwarves, the world is gnawed by nameless things. Even Sauron knows them not. They are older than he." Perdona me? What are these nameless things? I know that passage is super short and it's like such a one-off. For some reason, when I first read that back in high school, and even when I just reread them not too long ago, I got chills, and I was just like, huh? Like, maybe Gandalf, you could spare just a little crumb of knowledge as to what they are. You saw them, you must know something. And they're, like, not even Sauron knows about them, and they're older than probably most everything on Middle-earth. I'm still flabbergasted. What more did Tolkien have for us to experience? But I'm off on a tangent. Let's get back to why we're here. But Gandalf, he refuses to elaborate on what they are because he doesn't want to darken the light of day. Here, this fellowship has taken on this colossal undertaking. It's daunting. It's a lot. They've broken up at this point. Sam and Frodo are off doing their thing. Merry and Pippin are kidnapped as far as they're aware. And he doesn't want to depress them further by telling them about stuff. What is down there? I have a guess. I think these nameless things are similar in a way to Ungoliant. If you watched my first video that I made a while ago, I made a theory about where I think and how, where she came from. And I think they have similar origins. They're hideous, unknown things that were birthed into this world from that War of Sound. And hungering, just as Ungoliant did, they had not to consume, but the very roots of the earth. Now, there is a theory that maybe the Watcher in the water, you know, that hideous squid thing, that maybe he was one of those nameless things that was down there, except he bounced when the Balrog first showed up. Now, that isn't like a proven true theory. That's just something people like to hypothesize about. But it can give us a bit of insight, I guess, into what these nameless things potentially looked like. Now, of all the things that Gandalf has said in the retelling of his fight, which there's quite a bit, you should just read the books in regards to being at the roots of the earth and witnessing these things where no one has gone. This is by far the most metal. Now, I have walked there. That isn't to say he also isn't, at the current moment, shitting bricks. Dude is terrified. He says, "In that despair, my enemy was my only hope, and I pursued him, clutching at his heel." And so he run away / chases this Balrog from the depths of the earth up to one of the highest peaks in all of Middle-earth, and from there we know how it ends. So there you have it. What is down there? I don't know, like, there's so much more that I'm sure Tolkien had planned and could have given us and shared with us in his world. It's a damn shame we didn't get any more. But that's also kind of the draw of it all. Like I said, I think about these nameless things far too often and what they possibly are, where they could tie into a future potential story. And that's what I love about just fantasy, that we can hypothesize on our own and with friends about what could be, what may be, and where it could have gone. All in all, use your imagination. It's good for you and it makes you less boring. Okay, bye. I love you.